notably, on the piece that I have running the race, for some reason I was having issues with keying lattice deformers. I don't know if it was anything specific, but I wanted to have like a bit of warp to it. Also, it wouldn't allow me to apply a warp deformer for some reason.
That's weird. For the lattice deformer, were you trying to key like the individual lattice points?
That's what I was trying at one
Okay.
point.
I think I've had people do that before, but it's not something I would normally recommend because it's like hard to kind of key and modify that. So which piece was that on again?
The red piece that's running.
Oh, okay. And
That's why it just like squashes awkwardly instead of like doing anything fun.
Gotcha. I would have also suggested maybe you could try, depending on the motion you were trying to get, you could have maybe tried a bend deformer. What were you trying to have him do?
I just wanted a bit of like a wrench to it as it moved, which I think bend deformer would probably be the one that would fit best to that now.
Yeah, and then if you wanted him to like bend, not from like the middle, but from the bottom, you could move the deformer down and then mess with the high bound, I think, and then he would just sort of flop like from the ground instead of curling awkwardly into a fetal position.
Also, the bridge part that moves, I had a bit of issues with where when I tried to do transformations with it, like a rotation or a scale. Well, actually not scale because I didn't mess with that. But it was more that rotation and no, I think that's something. It was only rotation. Sorry, rotating it like you see in it, the way it kind of like slants.
Yeah.
Rotation would mess with the actual geometry and not its position. And I couldn't find anything specific on why it would be doing that.
The only time I've ever seen that happen is usually if there's some kind of, usually has something to do with like extra constraints or like how stuff is parented or organized in the outliner. Without looking at the myosine, it's a little hard to figure out why that's happening. But like I said, usually it's because of how something's like parented. But yeah.
Yeah, probably if for whatever reason I would like figure out what that issue is and just make it a bit more like a dramatic like throws off the rail.
Gotcha.
Certainly.
Oh, no worries. All right. Yeah. So all right. Cool. So I guess with all that in mind, does anybody have any thoughts or comments on this? Keeping in mind this is a race, so like, can you understand the story? Is each quote-unquote character easy to identify? Are they somehow appealing? Do they feel sort of like cute and lifelike? And then, how is the camera's placement or movement affecting or enhancing your perception of the race? And was whatever the outcome of the race was satisfying? Yeah, so bearing all of that in mind, anybody have any thoughts and comments on this, or like things they like, things they think that could be improved?
I wish when the track gets messed up, the train would actually go to the end and derail. I think that would be a bit more fun.
That would be funny.
We'll probably have to do that.
I think I like the little dudes that are sort of like dancing around at the end. I think it might be cool if they were staggered a little bit in like the direction that they moved, or not the direction, but like they all jump up and down at the exact same time.
Yeah. So individualize a bit more.
Yeah, which could, I mean, unless you keyed them all as like a group or something like that, you could just grab them and like shift their keyframes around.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
I mostly did that since it was 11 p.m.
Fair. But yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments? All right. I think it might also be kind of nice to maybe get a little bit closer to the characters, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's possible. The camera was actually closer. This is just how it rendered out for some reason. So I'll have to.
That's weird.
Mess with its positioning.
You can always put it into nuke when you scale.
That's true.
I can look at that, but I do not know how to mess with nuke.
Or After Effects.
It's not. Yeah.
Scale.
Yeah. Nuke isn't terrible. Opening Nuke on these computers is weird.
Does it have education licenses?
They're honestly, I don't know. I think there's some kind of weird hack to getting into Nuke. There's like 7 versions of it on these computers. They just never actually function and like open for me. But I think there's
Well, if I find a version of Nuke, I'll toy around with it.
I mean, you could find a version. You could also scale it in like again something like After Effects, like you just said as well. But
I'm gonna just like also just like zoom the camera region in Premiere, possibly.
yeah. I mean, I was gonna say it also might be cool. I'm thinking like, is there a way where you can sort of like compress things so that they're maybe a little bit closer together? And I was like, if you, because it seems like with the apart from that ball like scooching over at the end, everything's like pretty close to the track, and I feel like you could almost push the camera in pretty close, so like most of the movement was just sort of happening, like focusing on these guys, and you almost wouldn't even see these little dudes at the end, if that makes sense. Because I think that would also help if you had the bend deformer on the little red guy, like you were talking about. It would help sort of show off that motion more because it's would be like larger in the frame. And I actually feel like also maybe like a lower camera angle would help. You could have the red guy, so it looks like the ball comes and like hits him and sort of carries him off.
Yeah.
It might also be funny if the ball like came and just sort of squished him, and you just like saw his little squished body.
So that's what I was thinking originally doing with the train.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It was that or moving the track, and I wanted to see if I could like mess around with the track.
Mhm.
But the track also did a bit funny, so maybe I'll switch it around in terms of what happens.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I feel like what's actually happening is like clear. What's the little
It's
white
the golf
dude?
ball
Okay.
we use. It's again that's probably something a lower angle would be able to help to see like the stupid amount of
Pips on it.
like indents in it.
Yeah. Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I feel like overall it's clear. It could maybe just be a little more dynamic, which kind of just like camera stuff. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this? All right. Forks. All right. Wait, is part of the knife missing now? This is weird. I think I'm just imagining things. All right, cool. So any thoughts or comments on this one? Yep.
I feel like the camera angle that I kind of picked, now that I see like how it is like fully playing out, I feel like it's probably should have it perpendicular to the how they're going. So you can't really see like the cup that's like rolling, like it's the
Hmm.
top that rolls back too much.
Gotcha.
The cup is back. What? I thought oh yeah, because he's like as I have to just like make it pass, but I feel like it probably should have made perpendicular to like better get the movement of all the objects.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I saw the cup stop. I just sort of like couldn't quite figure out why, I guess.
Yeah, because it hits the stove, like the burners, and so it rolls back.
Yeah. But I think part of me I think actually likes the camera angle just from the overall sort of composition of the scene. I think it's interesting. I mean, I like that you can see in the ovens just because it's nice detail, but like I kind of like the diagonal line across the screens. So you might maybe consider some kind of combination of camera movements where like you
It cuts to like this angle, but it starts off perpendicular or something.
yeah, or like do something like that and like play around with multiple cuts. I do kind of like in this version, like I didn't see the knife as it first sort of flew out of the plate. So like all of a sudden there was like this giant knife flying through the air, and I was like, oh my god, which like I kind of like that as an effect. So I think that if there's a way to keep that or play that up, that would be cool. Or you could even go in and maybe, because you have that like nice little wiggle where it looks like the knife's trying to like pull itself out of the cutting board.
Yeah.
If there was a way to highlight that as well, that might also be kind of like a cute little aspect of the story.
Okay.
But yeah.
That was from
Oh, yeah. But yeah, anybody else have any thoughts or comments?
Maybe like shorten the lead length on like how the knife travels, like just make it just like close the frames a bit more and make it a bit faster. So it just like it had a bit more to the impact. But other than that, sense.
I could agree with that. I do also think it's a little weird, like the knife sort of straightens itself somehow.
Yeah.
Um,
I wanted to like emote the end just because it won.
right.
So I guess I could find a way of making it a little more smoother how it uprights itself.
Or you could, I mean, you could even play off the idea that you started with at the beginning, which was it's stuck in this board, like it has to sort of wiggle its way out. So like
Oh, okay.
if he lands in, like have him, you know, pop himself out a little bit, and then he could be standing straight. I like the way the fork sort of like flips around. It's a cute motion. Yeah. Anyone else?
It looks like a texturing thing. Are the glasses, are the cups made out of like a transparent material?
Yeah. So the cup on the oven and the stove is I think it's just the coloring just because it's gray.
Okay. So
Because in the cup in the back you can see that it's kind of transparent.
okay. Because because like I was noticing the shadows of it and like opaque and like transparent objects don't really have like that harsh of the shadows. Like next like this isn't like anything with like the animation, but like whenever you have a transparent object, just make sure you go into the shape and then uncheck opaque just so you don't have those harsh shadows on the glasses.
Fair point.
It's like
I feel like it's kind of weird. It like looks. It looks to me sort of like a correct shadow where you see the light coming through it at the beginning, and then at the end it looks a little intense. But I feel like it might. When I'm looking at the projector, it feels to me more like this thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was actually talking about the one in the back.
Oh, okay.
Very intense
The one
shadow.
in the back, I don't know what happened. Like, I think the shadow like disappeared like, halfway through jumping. I don't know what happens there.
Well, now I'm curious.
Like see?
Oh, yeah, that one definitely is. Yeah.
Right there.
Oh, that's weird. Interesting.
Yeah, that's actually
I find half the time glass shadows work really well, and half the time you need to like twiddle with their settings aggressively to make them work.
Because the glass behind everything are panes, and then obviously the shadow too.
Right. Interesting. But yeah, and then I think if you end up doing anything more with this and you have to re-render stuff, I would also maybe try to cut down some of the sampling if you can.
This was our area took kind of a while to render just because it's the metal, so I think probably I'll just take more time.
It could also be, I mean, you said these were like also refractive glass pieces in the background. That would also definitely jack up your render times.
Okay.
Having,
Probably just hide those.
yeah, or you could hide them, or you could just like figure out some like weird way to render them with like only the reflections or something like that. Because yeah, projecting, like anytime light is bouncing through glass, it always takes longer to render the caustics and stuff of that. But yeah, I for a minute thought this was a giant piece of toast and was very confused. Cool. Any other thoughts and comments on this? All right. Fruit. I see the cabinets have acquired an upgrade. Oh my god. All right. Any thoughts and comments on this? That's quite silly. I feel like the motion of the knife, I'm digging the giant knife murdering the apple casually. I feel like the motion of it is a little bit weird, where it almost looks like it's slowing down like right before it hits the wall, and I feel like it should be moving faster in general and like just sort of hit the wall and stop more immediately, and then maybe it would do like a wiggle back and forth or something from just like vibration on the impact. But I like the reskin of the cabinets. I think that looks nice.
The knife floating in the reflection of the tiles.
Ooh, I always like floating knife reflections. Wait, where?
It's kind of like at the four corners of the tile right above.
Like right here?
Up and then over. Yeah, it's like hovering on there.
Huh. I don't think I would notice it if I was, unless I was like very explicitly looking for it, but that is quite funny.
I noticed the motion in the reflection.
Yeah.
The knife come in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Which actually, I guess for this particular type of marble, this looks like rough stone, and this feels maybe a little reflective for it. But it does seem like there's, and I can't tell, it might just be like lucky happenstance, but it does seem like there might be like a little bit of a map in between the actual tiles, which is nice to sort of like cut that reflection. But again, I can't super tell.
Somebody actually put that.
But yeah, any other thoughts and comments on this? All right, I think this is Daniel's, and I'm pretty sure he's actually not here right now. I mean, I would say just like in case he comes back and watches the crit from class, like maybe it would be nice to get a little bit more like squash and stretch or bounce in the fruits, especially the pear. It feels like their motion is a little bit static, but definitely dig the knife twist at the end.
The pear does seem to float quite a bit for the first jump.
Yeah. Like yeah. And I guess this is like a little apple, but like that seems to have like a little bit more consistent motion, but I feel like like some squash and stretch and then like fiddle around with how the pear especially is jumping would be good. Not only to make it more realistic, because that was definitely floaty, but like if there was like some squash and stretch or like a little bit more like back and forth rotation and stuff, I think it would also give the pear just like a little more character. And even like the rotation without the squash and stretch would also sort of help to make that feel a little bit more realistic. I say realistic as we're talking about like jumping pears, but you know, whatever. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments? All right. I see a noisy ramp. Did the spoon just fall asleep? All right, any thoughts and comments on this one? Wait, actually, I'm curious. Whose project is this? Okay. So did the spoon fall asleep? Or like right at the beginning when he sort of like, he looks like he's sort of bent down and then like passed out, and then he has like a moment where he like wakes up and he's like, the race.
I think it might be determination.
Okay.
I was trying to like give them different characters, like.
I mean, I definitely get that they have different characters. I'm just curious what the intent with the spoon is, because I read it as sleeping. You've made
I think I was going for like. Wait, what was I going? I honestly think I was actually going for like the stance, the ready stance, and that like when people are ready to go, like they move a little bit, but it might be like a bit. I guess it can be interpreted as falling asleep because I did it a bit too intense, but.
Well, I was gonna say, so how did you end up bending these? Was it like deformers, or did you do light rigging?
Used the formers.
Okay.
And it kind of like crashed every 5 seconds.
Oh
so,
God.
Like, it was
Gotcha.
And also, like, I have another question. Like I had to like render these camera angles like separately. I had to tell. So is there a way in Maya to say, hey, render on this camera for these few frames, and then render on this camera for the next few frames, so that I don't have to like
Go back and manually set it.
Go back and manually do that.
My hacky bad way of doing things is I just key the same camera for all of my camera shots, but that's a bad way of doing things. I think there's ways with scripting or something like that where you can do it, like light scripting, but I've never tried to do it, so I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I feel like there has to be some kind of way to do that. I'm sure someone's written a plugin for it, if nothing else. But yeah. Yeah, I'm used to just coming in and like sort of systematically going through and babysitting my renders and just sort of manually setting everything up. But now I'm curious. I'll make a note to look into that. But yeah, so I was gonna say, I guess nipping back to the sort of ready stance, I'm imagining that like, if it's sort of one of the ones where they're like crouching before they start the race, I think you could sell that a little bit more if there was a way to like actually get him crouching. So like bend the lower part of his body as well, if that makes sense, and that might sort of help to sell like he's really like readying himself to like start running forward, which I think.
Can it be like a wave system like that, or like a side, or whatever the one's called?
Yeah, I was gonna say it might actually be really annoying to do with deformers, and would probably be easier to do with a light rig. Which, strictly speaking, we're going over today if that's something that you want to like fiddle around with. But yeah, I mostly use deformers as a modeling aid rather than doing stuff with animation. So I find them like a little bit awkward to work with, but I'm sure you could do it. It might just take a little bit of finessing.
Yeah, the worst part was is that when I keyed the deformers, they didn't show up in the time slider thing as like a key thing. So it was kind of like I
Yeah.
had to guess somewhere.
You can.
Was it here again?
Yeah, you can find them in the hyper or the graph editor if you can't. Yeah, because there's certain things that like the keyframes won't show up in the viewport, but they will in the graph editor if you like pull it open. So that probably I imagine would also help.
Okay.
But yeah, cool. So anyone have any thoughts and comments on this?
Did you add any sort of any specific map for like specular on the countertop?
You can kind of see it broken up. Like
Yeah, it looks like there's a
I
bit.
do admit that like I could have done more with the environment, but
No, that's not it. It's just I was just saying because the way the light refracts off it makes it look like it's following the radius, and I couldn't tell if it was like what specifically you did with the specular, like how it reflects or refracts light.
Take a guess at either an additional noise texture or like another noisy ramp.
oh, this is like I made that whatever the wavy thing is using noise, and then I turned on what was it, interpolation? I think that's what this setting is called. And then I used the exact same thing. I turned on alpha's luminance and then
Oh, okay.
just plugged that into the reflection thing. So
Nice. Yeah, not a bad way of doing stuff.
This is where it's like it might be like a bit excessive in this case because I think countertops like that are usually like a flat reflection because it tends to be like almost like a resin coat on it for the most part.
I was gonna say I kind of like it depending on the material you are going for.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Yeah.
Because it was like a basic marble top.
Yeah.
It'd be a bit more of like a regular reflection.
I mean, my parents have a marble countertop and it has like that kind of broken up reflection, but either way.
And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like in this, I'm gonna say when it happens. But, like I tried to do like a dolly zoom thing, like
Right there.
no, not here.
Oh.
When there, you can kind of see it, but I wish
Oh.
I wish I had more stuff in the background to like make the effect like more.
That thing where like it like sucks the camera in with the
Yeah.
fork and spoon.
Yeah,
Okay, like in
Jaws
Ratatouille.
when they
No.
that-
It's been a long time.
Shining recently because it's Halloween.
No.
So you just have like more stuff in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to, like make it more.
It's not the prominent subject in the scene, so I don't really like think much of it.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything inherently weird about it.
Yeah. Seems like a clean kitchen, you know?
It does.
Like too clean. Like cabinets don't have drawers.
But yeah.
Seems like my kitchen at one time.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like the actual animation itself is pretty nice. Like, I mean, apart from me just like misinterpreting what the spoon was doing, I do like how they sort of like jump and then the fork, how it leans forward as it's running is pretty nice. I think. I think the one thing, apart from maybe trying to like twiddle with the spoon again, I don't know if that's just like me being a dingus and being like, oh, the spoon fell asleep naturally. It's a narcoleptic spoon. I think the other thing I would look at, just like in terms of motion, is maybe how the rolling pin crushes the spoon. Because I mean, there's obviously definitely like a little bit of gooiness to the spoon, obviously just like for the sake of stylization. But I think it feels like the rolling pin would still maybe bump a little bit or sort of like move back and forth as it hits the the spoon and like how it rolls over it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the spoon, like if you've ever played with a spoon or like run spoons over with things, like when you run over the bowl part of the spoon, it usually like kicks the handle part up a little bit into the air. So that might be something that you could do, and that actually might be something cute to sort of play up as like, oh, I just got run over, as like the final death of the spoon. But yeah. I also kind of like, you have like that like blue lighting and then the sort of yellow lighting in the corner. I kind of like, that'd be kind of fun to like play with the color temperature of the lighting. I think that could maybe do some fun stuff to sort of enhance the overall look of the scene without like doing a bunch of crazy like color changes in your textures or anything like that. But yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. Snakes. I see. Yeah, the motion of the snakes does look really nice.
Just assigned a former.
Nice.
I particularly like whenever he goes inside the thing, which I only just now realized is really shiny.
Is this, what did you texture the orange dude with? Because it seems like his texture is almost rotating, or like bubbling.
It's just a regular texture. I don't know why it's changing.
Okay, it might just be, is it like reflective? Because I'm thinking maybe he's just like picking up the tile reflections in the floor.
Yeah, the scales are
Okay.
shiny, so it's probably just picking up on the white reflections of the floor.
Gotcha. Okay, well, it is really shiny. Why is it Outback?
Outback Steakhouse.
What? Oh, no, I mean, I know Outback Steakhouse, but like, why? Is there a doghouse?
It's in the kitchen, so I
What?
might as well make it.
Oh, I see what you were doing. Oh, I see. It's like a bad pun. I see.
There you go.
It took me a minute. Okay, that's kind of funny. I like it.
The room is kind of barren. Like, if I were to redo this, I'd probably put just more stuff in the background.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think the animation went well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the motion of the snakes looks really nice. If you're looking for silly, dumb things to populate an environment with, you could sort of turn it into like, you could put a lot of potted plants around. It might possibly be kind of amusing with the Outback pun that you're doing. But I'm also just,
Around the table.
what?
Chairs around the table.
That
Yeah.
I just want model chairs at all the slides.
But wait, you can just, like, literally just grab the legs off the table, put them on, and then, like, put a little seat.
That's okay. I don't really need seat, you know.
I mean, yeah. I've seen fancy people with fancy chairs. But yeah, so I mean, what do you guys think of the animation, race story, etc.?
I really like the sign, the former.
Yeah.
It's very pleasant to look at. I will say yes, it's a very cringy pun, but again, it works.
Cringy puns are life.
I didn't think I'd get points docked for a cringy pun.
I would never dock points for a bad pun or a failed joke unless it severely impacted the animation somehow. If anything, I'll probably just stare at it in confusion and then be like, oh, I see now. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I think the movement of the snakes is definitely really nice. Are they both like aiming to go in the house, or I guess?
It's kind of hard to tell with the angle, but like the corn snake, the white one,
Yeah.
is also aiming for the entrance.
You kinda,
of
like,
the
veered away.
steakhouse, and then he veers off.
Okay.
Which is why he like suddenly changes direction because the other snake is already aiming.
Gotcha. I think if there was a way to maybe play that up a little bit more, and it might just be changing the camera angle slightly, or if they were both sort of, because it kind of, like, this guy's very obviously heading for the inside of that house, whereas this one kind of looks like he's facing or like trying to go not so much for the house. So if he was like bent towards it and then the camera angle switched a bit and then he like veered off more obviously, I guess, I think that would just like help to sell that in terms of the animation. But I mean, apart from that, I think like the motion of the snakes and stuff looks really, really nice. So I think I would focus mainly on that for the animation, and then yeah, just like a few extra random things in the background would be nice.
Maybe add some trim on the walls.
Yeah, I always like trim. I also always like if they're me being the insane person, I'm like, I would just model the tiles on the floor, and you can use. So here's a dumb thing, because you were saying you were excited by texture deformers. You can add like model these floor tiles in, and then just like apply a very light texture deformer to them, so that they have like slight bend, and then populate the scene with duplicate special, and model in tiles. That's just how I do things because I really hate texturing floors properly, so I'd rather model them in, but feel free to not do that.
I just want
Yeah.
basic tile textures.
Yeah, that's fair. I get a little overzealous with my tiles sometimes. But yeah, cool. I think overall this looks pretty cool. Any other thoughts and comments? All right. I think the only other thing I might look at, and it's like super minor, but like it does feel kind of weird that this like mostly as like the orange snake turns the corner that he's like shimmering. He reminds me a little bit of the school of fish in Finding Nemo.
Yeah, I might actually use the bend deformer I already have on him.
Yeah.
Like, have him bend more on that turn.
Mm-hmm.
Probably look a little better, but
It does seem like maybe a little bit drifty, but
the snakes are kind of like that, especially on smooth surfaces.
yeah, it's true. Cool. I do like that like really like close-up shot you have in the beginning. I think that's nice to just show off the motion of the snakes. Trippy lights.
Big fan of the lights already.
What?
Already a fan of the lights.
All right. Cool. So any thoughts and comments on this one?
Again, I think it's really cool lighting scene with doing the reverse where like the only light source is coming from the objects, and then that keeps it all kind of mysterious of like not knowing what's about to happen. Right here though, it might go against it because it's hard to tell what causes it to get knocked off the track or like why it's the hole while the arm made it. Other than that, I think it looks really cool.
The only thing is like the camera movements are super jerky.
Actually.
Yeah, I was gonna. I do find them a little bit whippy. Especially sort of like right around, like that last turn and like kind of one of them in the beginning. Did you have a thing or does anyone else have anything? Like, yep.
I think it might be just a little too fast, but I think it helps. Especially Alex Lobo at the beginning too.
Wait, say again.
The speed is a little too fast, but I think it's also because the camera movement is a little whippy. So I think if you had the camera, I think behind the yellow car, since you're that's gonna win, I
Mm-hmm.
think it will help. It's like a kind of a racing game.
Yeah.
You can see where the car is in relation to the track, and so you kind of follow it. And it would be kind of cool to see the car in front get knocked out, and you just kind of zoom past them. So that's just an idea.
Okay.
I am curious whether or not this got rendered at 30 frames per second when it was supposed to be 24 or not.
Mm.
So, yeah. The reasons is, first of all, the reason that there are no other lights is not because I didn't put any other lights. There actually are other lights in the scene. It's because I used Zinc to render this. So
What
I was
is
using a
Zinc?
cloud rendering service, and it uploaded, and then I changed some stuff, and it had a hiccup, and I re-uploaded later, but the re-upload didn't go through, so it went through with no lights. So this is actually an earlier version of the scene. As
And
far
it
as this.
looks cool with just the emission from
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, unintentional good thing, I guess. But as far as what was I gonna say? The speed of it, yeah, I definitely would have liked to have to slow it down. It was difficult to tell because I couldn't get the viewport to like follow my camera while I was on the motion pad, so I basically was just scrubbing through, and the speed of my hand was obviously not accurate to 24 frames a second. I don't think that this was rendered at the wrong frame rate.
Play blasting.
Oh yeah. if I was
Yeah.
more adept at using one, for sure. But that's pretty much it. You lose the camera. I tried to use some environmental fog and it just totally didn't work because you lose the camera in the fog for some reason. Like right by when you get to the tube at the end. I don't know.
Oh
why
wait, was that the red stuff?
Yeah, that's the red stuff, and I
Oh.
don't understand why it's just a wall of fog.
Probably the settings.
Yeah, it has somewhere in the settings. For the rest of it, it seems okay. Like you can see buildings in the distance, and all of a sudden, just a massive hard wall of fog. Not really sure why that happened.
I know.
But yeah.
Was it the? So when you were rendering with Zinc, is that? Did that
So
still
I-
use like Arnold render
It
or?
used the Arnold
Okay.
render, but I couldn't see anything.
Right.
For, you know,
The whole
6
thing.
or so hours that it was going, I you know, the alternative was like 20 hours on my PC or
Okay, yeah.
6 that I had no control over.
Right.
So.
But I was gonna say, so there's like, depending on the type of environmental fog you use, some of the settings do end up creating just like a giant terror wall of fog.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had your Maya file handy, I could look at that. But to me, it looks like you sort of set it to be, instead of like coming from the ground, coming from the side, and maybe you just sort of hit that area of like really, really dense fog.
Yeah, it seems like it's definitely, there's a setting that's a bit wonky there.
Yeah. But like it's probably a fairly simple-ish fix if you just like find the right setting to soften that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was gonna say that was like the most disconcerting part for me when there's like suddenly just sort of like
Yeah.
everything turned red.
Definitely wasn't intentional, but that's pretty much it.
Gotcha.
The only question I really had
Mhm.
was, so I wanted to switch targets halfway through. You know, you sort of start on the blue car and then the red takes the
Yeah.
lead and it follows it. The way I did that was I just put the camera on a motion path and sort of had the camera move in the right spot,
Mhm.
and then keyed the target of the camera
Mm.
as I went along. But it really worked a lot better when I just threw the target underneath the car, like as a child of that object.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was wondering if there's a way to sort of switch that mid.
Yes.
There is.
Parent constraints. We did. I was spacing out. We did constraints last week. Was that a thing, or is that some weird bit for this week? Say again?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you set it as a, if you constrain the target to a parent constraint, or I'm sorry, if you constrain the target to both cars with a parent constraint, you can key which car it will follow.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably how I would do that. It would be like a relatively simple way to do that. And then if you had that little target in a group or something like that, and you attach the group to the cars, you could still move the target on its own if you needed like a little bit of extra fine-tuning control of like where
Yeah.
stuff is pointing.
That definitely would have helped with the whippy camera motion, because a lot of it I think comes from me having to like manually key it and then not really being able to see what I'm working on because
Right.
of viewport issues and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that would be good. I'll definitely look into that.
But yeah, but I mean, I was gonna say, so yeah, like I think the speed coupled with some of the whippy camera movements is weird, but I don't find the speed of the cars themselves super off-putting. Because, I mean, to me, I kind of read it as like a Matchbox car thing where they do like really fast sort of sharp turns like
Yeah.
that. So it's like, to me, I think if that's what you're going for, it feels pretty nice.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind the speed of the cars. I would have liked the camera movement a little smoother. I think there's definitely a couple ways I could have done that, but I'll
Yeah.
look into that for the future, I guess.
Cool. And then I feel like, and you kind of talked about this, I guess, or someone mentioned this before with the, like seeing that little like pink car at the end fall off the track. I feel like if there was a way to make that more in frame or like more of like a substantial moment in the race,
Yeah,
that would be cool.
definitely there is. I mean, I could have just followed it down a bit as I panned up.
Mm.
That's camera control stuff that I definitely
Right.
am gonna try to improve.
I mean, I even meant like if there was like even beforehand, like as it's like right as it's coming around this bend, like what happens if it's sort of
Yeah.
like spun out almost and like rolled off the thing instead of just like flying off, or like I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I don't know
difficult
car
to see.
physics.
Definitely, what I did is I just peaked the motion pad a lot, so it starts sort of getting out of control.
Okay. Oh yeah,
It's-
yeah.
It's really hard to see it because of the way that it whips so quickly.
Which probably because the motion path was controlling the car, it made the camera a little whippy too. I guess is what
It's
happened.
actually 3 different paths.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
But yeah, cool. I do like the lighting though. It's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Maybe like a little dark right at the beginning, but like right when you get that cool sort of red behind the buildings, it makes a nice effect.
Yeah, the environmental lights would have been nice if they made it in.
Gotcha.
Wait, so the did at the end with the solid red, was that intentional?
What's that?
To have it just be a solid red with a cutaway, is that intentional?
Oh no, it's not.
No.
Okay, 'cause I interpreted
Fog
it as
fluke.
a kite, so it made sense to me. So.
Yeah, it's supposed to like pan up and follow it over the big cylinder, but now it hits a massive wall of fog.
But yeah,
I like it. I think it is a hard cutaway.
gotcha. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. I was wondering if there's ever anyone like babysitting these renders for these like third-party render places. Fish tank. Thoroughly distracted by the fish.
So for some reason, when I did this, it would not render the first frame every time I tried it.
Weird. Like just the first frame?
Yeah, the first frame came out fine, but after that was done, my crash happened like 15 times. I
Wow.
tried deleting my history, re-importing things, nothing.
That's weird. Were you? This is a dumb question. Did you try starting from like a different first frame?
Yes.
Okay. I figured you probably had, but I'm like, have to ask. And were you using? What were you trying to render this with?
Redshift?
Okay. And you were doing a batch render, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. I've never actually heard of that crashing before. Or like crashing in that way at least. Interesting. And this is like another just like dumb question. I assume that you tried this on multiple computers
Yes. In
Okay.
fact, I just tried it on the third one.
and it still explodes.
Yes.
Gross. Interesting. All right, so I don't know anything off the top of my head about that, but that's like a thing that I can maybe like help you look at later and see if I can like find something on the internet that might help with that. But I'm digging the like motion of the fish, the cute. Cool. So any thoughts and comments on I guess mostly just like the animation and camera work stuff? Yep.
I really like the just fish. Looks very nice. And the camera works good with the cuts and the angles. I think it worked really well. Like this little master shot here and panning up to the fish food and over to the fish and then this perspective of it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I do like the build up to stuff. I kind of wish the like food would have maybe a little bit of motion, as if an imaginary hand were sort of like bringing it up to the fish tank, or like maybe like turning it so it's like food would start to like shake it and fall in. I don't know if that's like something you had and then just sort of like ended up being like a render thing and like didn't show up in the viewport or whatever. But also just like weird tidbit, if you guys ever render stuff in the viewport or for a play blast, you can go in. So actually, convenient. I just have like a weird rig pulled up here. So I usually go in and recommend turning off stuff like the any like curves, or like in this case I have a bunch of skeletons and just crap showing in my scene. So if you go up to show, you can turn off like NURBS curves that'll unshow all of the controllers. You can also do like that. This whole thing is like, actually that's a joint. So you can just turn off like any other like weird stuff that you don't want displaying in your renders or in your play blasts. And you can also go in, there's some settings at the top here. There's this one for ambient occlusion, which is just, I don't know, sometimes it makes things look really weird, but like sometimes it just adds like a little bit of differentiation, especially in this case, like if everything's just sort of a gray Lambert. It'll just like add some fake shadowing in there and some like fake ambient occlusion. My personal favorite though is like the anti-aliasing. So if you look at like, especially the corner of his arm, hopefully that's showing up on the projector, but you can turn anti-aliasing on and it'll kind of like smooth that out. So if you guys are ever looking for ways to make your play blast look a little bit nicer, there's these settings here. And then again, I would just recommend turning off stuff like controllers and things. It just kind of, and like lights and stuff like that. It usually just kind of like makes things a little easier to see. But yeah, I do really like the motion of the fish though. Like I think that looks quite nice, especially from that like those shots where you sort of see from like the front and behind of the fish. It does a good job of sort of like selling that motion and like making it look natural and like really showing off the nice bendiness of that fish. Did you lattice deformer the fish? weird. That is quite nice. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish I found that setting somewhere, because that does create a very nice effect. Cool, and I like that you took the time. It looks like there's like some little bubbles chilling in the background somewhere, and like all the grasses and like little plants in your tank are actually moving, which is also a nice touch. But yeah. I think at the end it'd be really funny, and this is just me being like very silly stretch goals, but like I really want to see that goldfish mouth like open and be like nom nom and like trying to eat the food. But again, not a thing that I would necessarily expect. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts and comments on this? Anyone else experienced any other similar issues trying to render with Redshift before? All right. Things to look into. But yeah, I mean, I like the sort of like environment stuff. It might be cool to have like some more stuff. And again, I would focus on like actually getting it rendered first, obviously. But if you like find a solution, I think it would be cool, and you have time to like maybe throw a few other like just sort of fishy related objects or something on the desk, like maybe some other types of food or like stuff, if that makes sense, around the tank, because you do see it in a few frames and it feels maybe a little bit empty. But you could also probably get around that with like some texturing on the walls or some posters or something like that. It would also probably help to make that feel a little bit more finished. But yeah, motion of the fish definitely looks really nice though. Cool. Last call for questions and comments. All right.
So I'm aware that my sampling is like a monstrosity. I'm gonna fix it.
Cool. That's such a weird sampling pattern. I guess, did you like lock the sampling or like the noise pattern?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I've never actually like tried to do that. So seeing it is like, whoa, like that's a really weird. It almost looks like a Photoshop filter you put on. Anywho, it looks like you have some nice texturing and stuff going on with like the orange juice and the syrup containers.
Thank you. I also didn't realize till after. I think I didn't smooth the spoon.
Yes.
I'm looking at it now.
The spoon is definitely not smoothed. Although I will say, if you're looking for a way to make a disco ball, like honestly, that's
kind of what it looks like.
not a bad effect. But yeah, so what do you guys think of the animation, like movement of the characters, etc.? Cool. I definitely like they're going for the butter. I think that's cute. It's also kind of funny because like the weird person in me is like, wouldn't it be funny? Because technically it's like, oh, they're going for the butter, but they're also like stabbing pancakes. There should be some kind of pancake blood. And I'm just like, what? Stop. But yeah, I like the knife, how it just sort of like trips and falls. I think one thing I would watch out for, so it feels like the fork, there's a definite sort of, I guess just what was it, like a discrepancy in the cut, if that makes sense, where like you can see it gets like almost, it's like pretty much on the pancake, and then you cut, and then it's falling before it gets to the pancake, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like you could either do one of two things. The probably nicer looking option would be to just make that like a smooth transition. So you cut and then like have it continue the motion from that point. Or you could do something really dumb and do like a Monty Python thing where the guy's like running up the field and then they cut and then it's like completely running up like the whole back of the field again. But I feel like that would just be way more work than necessary to make that actually read well. So that's like this like one sort of weird obvious thing that would probably be a relatively simple fix. And then I think, so it looks like you definitely have some like deformer action going on the spoon, especially at the end. And the fork as well, it looks like. So what kind of deformers did you use for that?
It was just a bend deformer, and I kind of was having trouble getting it to do what I wanted at some parts, but I think I mean, I like what the spoon did at the end, but like the fork right there, I kind of wanted it to be a bit more smooth and it kind of.
Gotcha. Yeah, I find like animating smooth jumps with bend deformers is always something that's been a challenge for me. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know, just like a lot of tweaking to get it right, but it might be cool to go back, because like, again, that spoon does have some really nice motion, and like, because that one has that nice sort of wiggle, I kind of want it from the other stuff in the scene. So I think that is something that I would maybe focus on, and then also looking at maybe like this. It feels like they're kind of jumping a little bit slow, and maybe it feels like, so for the spoon in particular, like it feels like it's almost falling backwards as it's moving forward, if that makes sense, but it's not going fast enough for that. Like, and I'm thinking of something where like if you grab maybe like a big, like one of those like really long balloons they use for a balloon animal, and you like grab it at the base and go like ha with it really fast, like the top of that would fly backwards, which is like what it looks like it's happening with the spoon, but it's not, again, going quite fast enough to seem like it would justify that. So I feel like what you could do is maybe either bend the spoon forward, or sort of speed everything up, and then you could even like have some that are moving forward, and then like one that's just like stupidly cartoony and is just like flailing backwards behind it and just like very like jiggly. But yeah, so it might be nice to like play with the motion of that a little bit, but overall I do like the sort of table setting in the scene. The wallpaper for some reason works nicely with the pancakes, I think. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts or comments, or like things they like, anything like that? Yeah. All right. I'm still digging on the orange juice and the bottles. They probably like jacked up your render times for those few frames, but I do think they look nice. Bugs. Ooh. All right. Cool. So any thoughts, comments? Yep.
It's very satisfying watching that thing go down the steps.
Yeah, no, that's a delightful motion.
I see you added in like the 3, 2, 1 go and repost. Yeah.
Actually, no.
Oh.
I just did cards.
Bruh. I feel like we should.
I could have done inputs, but I don't know how to use After
Oh, yeah,
Effects
true.
videos nearly as well as I know how to use mine.
Bro, that's like actually respect for cards. But I would
Cards are
have
great.
if anything, like I would have like have there be contrast, because you kind of lose them as they go across the white background.
Yeah, that's something that I noticed happened after the render occurred, where they shifted from red to like a bluish. Red to
Mm.
I don't know, like bluish, where it kept it. Yeah, because like see they turned to blue as they crossed across, like as they get across along. I'm not quite sure why it was doing that.
I thought that was intentional, and I kind of liked it. I thought that shift to blue was intentional. I kind of liked it.
Hey man, I kept it.
Eh.
I could have re-rendered it. It was only like 70 frames. And it
Yeah.
took like a half hour to do. But I kept it because I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Happy accidents.
I want to see if you notice something though. Right there.
Is it because the box just floats, like the door just floats?
No, that's on purpose. I want to have it like levitate out the wall and be like, oh, secret tunnel.
Secret tunnel.
Yeah,
Secret
I have that
tunnel.
output saved to put on, but something happened where it rendered at 30 FPS instead of the 24.
Oh, okay.
So all of my timing got messed up.
Gotcha.
And I need to re-render this and then put on my sound effects because like.
Okay. I mean, you could just stretch the
countdown,
animation.
countdown, secret tunnel for going into the secret tunnel, and then
Nice.
evil laughter for cheating and winning because of it.
Nice.
Like in Super Mario 64 when you were making
That part right there though with that lag, I don't know why it's happening because it doesn't show up in the play glass when I'm doing it.
Okay.
See,
Which part where?
Corner, it like lags out for like a second, and I.
Oh. Oh yeah, that is weird. No, I actually didn't notice that. That's weird. I mean, my hacky solution would probably just be like splice your clip apart ever so slightly and then like twiddle with the speeds, but
Okay.
I'm sure that's some kind of weird, just like weird setting somewhere. I'm mostly like a modeling and texturing person so much as animation. So like troubleshooting wonky render settings isn't necessarily my specialty, but
And then second big question for you, don't know if you'll have an idea of how to solve it. After I apply a bend curve and then I want it to follow that curve,
mhm.
after it does its like rotation and follows the path, how do I make it separate from that that curve without breaking its model? Because I tried doing that and it just shot my caterpillar out into space.
So like you had it on a motion path and that's
I had
or
it on a nonlinear bend deformer to make it
Mm.
curve around the corners, and then I just wanted to continue following that curve in a straight line down the stairs.
yes.
But after I tried translating it in a straight line,
Yeah.
it yeeted it out into space.
Did you move the bend deformer with the model?
No, I left it on the corner.
Okay.
But, like, after it did its curve, it was just a straight line down.
Right. So a lot of times if you move the model, it'll change how the bend deformer works.
Okay.
Um,
Rather just do a motion path.
I mean you could try a motion path, but what I was going to say is just twiddle with the bend deformer and just like key it where you need the thing to bend, and then just sort of take it with the object, if that makes sense.
But like for the stairs, I just hand keyed out each of the models rotating down and through.
Yeah. I mean that looks really nice. But yeah, bend deformers, like if you shift the deformer and not the model, or vice versa, a lot of times it will break the ever living crap out of your model.
Yeah. My solution was just I made a third caterpillar and just overlaid as it was coming around the corner. And just kept it going straight.
Yeah.
And then yeeted the other one under the stairs.
I mean that feels like a good weird brute force solution if you like can't figure out how to fix an issue. And it works. Like I didn't really notice there was anything super weird about the motion of that or anything like that. So yeah, I think mostly what I would focus on for this is the camera motion, like at the end, like right after that cut.
That like it.
Or yeah, where it sort of like goes back and then like comes in, and it's like both of the caterpillars, like they're not quite in frame, but I'm also like not sure what the camera's
It's
going
to zoom
for.
on in while I have Evil Laughter running.
Okay.
And so I think I might have forgot to delete one keyframe or cause of that little dip, because it's supposed to just zoom in towards
Okay,
it, but it
yeah.
dips down, and I thought I got rid of that keyframe, but I guess not.
Gotcha. Maybe one too many Control Z's. But I was gonna say it also might be nice to have something framing, because like it's you kind of see it where like the cheating caterpillar dude is like a little bit like a nose ahead of the other guy, but it might be nice to have either have that as more of an obvious,
Do like
like
a complete side shot.
yeah, like
That photo across the finish line.
right, like a complete side shot, or do something where maybe this guy just like comes out of the side of the stairs a little bit sooner or something like that, so that he starts out like farther forward, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And like really like play that difference up, because I also like the first time I watched it, I was like so focused on this guy going down the stairs because it just looked really nice that I like didn't notice the dude going into a sketchy like hole in the wall until the second time around. But yeah,
You just used a ramp and just.
yeah,
Right. Okay. So speed up him going across and
yeah. It still looks really nice with this dude coming down, but yeah. Any other thoughts and comments?
Those legs were a pain in the ass to keyframe, by the way.
I don't doubt that. There's some clipping right as he's going down the top two stairs, I just noticed.
Wait, really?
I think so. I could be wrong. One thing that I was thinking would also be funny as we're watching for the clipping is like to have that right at the end.
Okay.
To have that like 3, 2, 1 go. You see? Kind of, maybe. You know those like weird clocks they're like LED clocks and they just have a thing that goes back and forth really fast? To like make the texture? I don't know.
Nope.
It's fair, because that was an awful description. Wait. I don't even know what to Google to find that, but I was gonna say there's like these weird clocks that sort of they make like a shimmering effect, and you can like program in pictures or whatever into them, and they just like,
I do know what you're
yeah.
talking about now.
I was like, that'd be really funny to have one of those just like sitting there for your light, but it just sort of like what you have with the sort of the way these are textured just reminded me of that.
I see that quote now.
Yeah,
I got it now. Okay.
but yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. Why, where did I put, okay. Oh, wait. Haha. Nice. All right, cool. Any thoughts and comments on this one? I like that everything sort of came together to be productive on this little birdhouse. It's kind of a cute premise. But yeah. Was that almost a thought that I heard or something?
Yeah, so the camera motion, where it like changes right around here, makes it really hard to tell if the hammer's knocking down the wrench.
I will second that because I actually wondered where the wrench went. But yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I just looked at it as like a sort of, oh yeah, okay.
Pulled out and swung around more.
Yeah.
That might
Maybe just like a simple cut to like a not like a wide shot, like a close up of the hammer hitting the wrench, like, and then turning into the screwdriver.
Yeah. I actually almost think yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think it would be nice to have something more focusing on like the camera bludgeoning the wrench off the table. And actually, I think the one time I'm gonna suggest a peaceable solution for something instead of like, wow, someone should like punch someone or like stab a pancake to death. I actually kind of think it's so I like that there's this birdhouse and there's like this thing that they're all working on. It might also be kind of cute to like actually not have them try to murder each other. And if they all just sort of were like, we're excited to go like be team building birdhouse creation thing, and where they all sort of started working on like different parts of the birdhouse. But again, I don't know what suddenly makes me be like, let's have a happy ending, but for some reason I think it would be cute here. I do like at the end that you have the screwdriver that's like actually screwing in the little screws. I think the screw should maybe be a little larger, but that's definitely like a cute sort of thing. Also, like, props for hanging up some extra tools on the background that makes it feel more like an actual workspace.
One problem that I noticed was
Mhm.
after rendering out, the wrench was supposed to, like, I had a bend corner on it, but in the render it's just like curved the entire time.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
That's bizarre. That would be perhaps a thing. So, like, if you play blasted, like, it did move in the play blast, right?
Yeah.
That's super weird.
Yeah.
Did you render with Arnold Redshift?
Arnold.
Okay. That's very strange. I've also never seen that issue before, but like if you send me a Maya file, I can take a look at that because that's also super weird. As much as I love Maya, I somehow question how on earth it got to be the industry standard because it's absurdly glitchy. But anywho, yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? I guess mostly on the motion of the objects at this point. I like how the screwdriver he just casually falls over. Like it's just such a, just like, it has a nice weight to it, and something about it to me makes like a comical effect that I find quite pleasing in the way he's not even like trying to gently lower himself. He's just like no, and he just like crashes to the ground and starts rolling. But like the way he falls, it feels again like really natural, and I think it creates quite a nice effect, and the fact that that motion is so realistic kind of actually makes it funnier in a way. I think the screwdriver is kind of like the most personality ridden, I guess, of all the characters. It might actually be funny to have him, so like, the motion as he falls is really nice. It might be cool if there was a way, maybe not like have him bending over, but he gets like a little floaty like right before he starts like screwing that screw in.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, that's a super unrealistic motion to try to capture anyway. But it feels, maybe if he like sort of jumped or something, like he like jumped a little bit higher and then like smushed his head in and just sort of like stood there. But I mean, honestly, speeding up the motion might just sort of like help with that in general. But yeah, such an aggressive hammer. But yeah, cool. All right, any other thoughts, comments? I'm super curious why the bend deformer didn't work, because it's weird for something to like show up in the viewport and then not in the render for something like that.
Yeah, I was really confused.
Pumpkin cards. All right, and I'm just gonna go back to my apparently violent ways. It'd be really funny if that pumpkin was chopped in half.
It actually does get a whole lot of it.
Does it? That's delightful. I want to see the pumpkin gore. Oh my god, you know what'd be really funny? To have like seeds and pumpkin guts spew out. Yes.
That was gonna be a lot.
Yeah. All right, cool. Any thoughts and comments on this? I like the idea of the pumpkin carts. Like they're quite. It looks like somebody attached like straws and candy as wheels. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but like it's super janky looking in like a really good sort of DIY weird cart
Yeah,
way.
It was supposed to be just like a skateboard wheel.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Because I actually like Googled people like doing like racing pumpkins, and it looked just as like.
That's such a weird thing that exists in general. But convenient for reference, I suppose. But yeah, I feel like I like the texturing you've done on the pumpkins. Like they all feel like you've done a good job of creating like different shaped objects, and like the slight variation in texture I think is nice. Especially like when you get up close to this little white dude. It looks like you've sort of put like a slight like noise deformer on him, or like not deformer, like a bump map or like slight variation in the shades of white on him, which I think it's like such a simple thing, but I think it helps make it look a lot more realistic as a pumpkin. But yeah, I was like weirdly surprised by the axes when they came into frame. I was like, oh my god. I feel like it might be cool to do, because like the little white pumpkin was in the lead for most of the way. I feel like it might be cool if maybe it feels just sort of kicking the orange guy when he's down. She stops like right in front of that axe. But I was gonna say, I'm not sure how physics of pumpkin racing work, but it seems like maybe the heavier one would like come down with more momentum and like keep rolling more? I don't know. But again, I've never looked up reference for anything like this, so I could be completely wrong. But I was mostly just talking in terms of like aesthetics and story, I guess. It might be kind of cool if something happened where like the orange pumpkin suddenly took the lead, or like the white one won because the orange one was like ahead of it and kind of like so intent, I guess, on getting to the finish line that he got hit by an axe, if that made sense. But I also do kind of like what you have. I mean, it seems like they are sort of operating under sort of normal physics, where like they start off faster when they get down the ramp, and then they're just sort of like coasting to the finish line. So I also do kind of like that as a premise, where they are just sort of like little physics-driven carts that aren't doing anything in particular to go forward. But yeah. What was this? So like right when the axe hits the orange pumpkin, there's like a little flash of yellow on the orange pumpkin, What?
That's probably because
Like right there. Did you see it?
that's probably because I changed the pumpkin because I made a pumpkin that was broken and a normal pumpkin that starts at the end.
Okay, so it was just like a switching
Yeah.
of textures. Interesting. Gotcha. Oh, it'd be so funny to have that pumpkin get cut in half.
I was originally cut in half, but I wasn't sure how interesting because like the wheels would still go.
Right. I mean, so I'm picturing something where like, I mean, if you're already swapping out pumpkins, because I did something similar where I was like cutting a pepper in a project that I did, and I just had like 7 versions of that pepper with the different slices. It was super tedious, but like I'm picturing something like the axe just sort of goes straight through the pumpkin and like cuts it in half, and then it does move a little bit because it's just been hit by an axe, but like maybe one piece sort of falls off the edge and the other one just sort of like spins off and does this really sad, just like I'm only on 2 wheels, flop, and just like lands on the ground. But again, I think that would be more sort of like just sweetening stretch goals kind of thing. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this? All right. This is also like the sketchiest setting ever. It's just like, it's just a race track of death that everyone has to casually walk through the axes before the race starts. Oh my god. Why? What? Alright, you get all the points for having a ridiculous premise for this.
I like the surprise.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. You're really into like weird jump scares or like not jump scares, but like weird imagery at the end of your projects.
I like stories that are interesting.
Indeed. Actually, also, so just like speaking of weird images, this has nothing to do with the assignment. My roommate has a shirt that's covered in Nicolas Cage's face, and yesterday he just got matching pants, and it kind of reminds me of like the Thomas the Train and the fish at the end of this, but just like covering his entire body. It's awful. Anyway, but yeah. So what do you guys think of the animation premise? Anything like that?
Very interesting.
Like this, it's funny.
Even that, the fact that it's not regular is still pretty. I think it actually adds to the comedy. It's just like, I don't know.
But yeah,
The only thing I can conform to like
yeah.
other than that.
I mean, I actually agree. I do think I really like the idea overall. I think it's super funny. I think the fish flopping could be a little bit more randomized, like you said. I think that the motion, like the base motion of it is really nice, like especially on this dude where he's just like really kind of like spazzily flopping around. It feels like nicely uneven. I think it might be nice if maybe he like rotated a little bit as he's flopping, because it almost feels like he's just sort of like, they feel like pebbles that have been skipped across a stone that are also flopping, if that makes sense. So I think if those motions were sort of more integrated together, where as he flopped, he sort of did more of like a rotating side to side, or like grab, I guess, both the deformer and the fish, like it seems like you've been doing, and like have him sort of hit, like land on his head one time and then like flop more like randomly. I think that would be like really sort of help to sell the realism of that flopping. It would also probably help if I didn't see the bend deformer, because I can see exactly what you're doing here. But yeah, I really want to see some like, I don't know what this would look like rendered, but like on that crazy rainbow fish, I really want to see some like super shiny reflective scales on it. Like the textures set it up for that so nicely that I like really, really want to see that in the final.
Really sharp pointy teeth on it.
That's also true. That would also be super funny. What?
I was like, I have time for this.
That's fair. Actually may have forgotten to put teeth on a freelance project, so I have to do that after class today, cough. But yeah, no, that's fair. And then I think it would also be nice. So I assume that this is you're going for like snowy sort of mountains in the background. Yeah, so I think it might be good to maybe get a little more detail. Like if you've not started rendering yet, try to get a little more detail in that background. Maybe do some kind of like, if it was like snow caps or like snow drifts, or there was like some rocks peeking through, I think that would help sell it a little bit more. Because right now, and again, this is just me being like a weird dingus who sees things really strange, it kind of looks like a big pile of salt until you see the ice. Like I wasn't super sure what that was supposed to be, and then I was like, oh, it's ice. That makes sense. I've also like CG textures ice. Yeah, I played with this image before. It might be good to scale it down a little bit. It seems like the scale of the cracks themselves are a little large, and also scaling it down or doing like the repeat U or repeat V in the texture node would also help with, when you get up close, there's like a little bit of low resolution that's obvious in the texture. But yeah.
But if, like, if I made it even smaller, the pattern of it would be super.
Or like, okay.
Like if you see it like from my view in Maya, I can really see where the pattern is.
Oh, okay. Okay, is this like one of the ones that doesn't tile super nicely?
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha. All right. In that case, I think I might, I don't know. I think I kind of rather slightly lower res textures than having stuff tiling, so I guess it's just a judgment call based on the textures in that case. But yeah, super digging the concept overall. It's really weird. It would also be, yeah, this is just weird, but in a delightful sort of way. Any other thoughts and comments? All right. Cool. Erg. Well, judging by the reaction people had, I assume the twist was good. I do also like the stuff in the drawer. Like, it feels like a real drawer, but like neater than most drawers I have. But yeah, so any thoughts, comments?
Movement-wise, I like how the knife is like a little slower, a little more plodding, like he's not really all there. He's just sort of following along, doesn't really know what's going on.
I would buy that. It seems like the fork at the end is just like, hey dude, like let's jump, come on. And then the knife's like, all right, la-da-da, and then he falls. But yeah.
Can you follow on the last frame? Or like the last second?
Now?
One more. Yeah. The knife.
Sorry.
Yeah. If it lands like that, maybe like having it land flat or like across, or like it just ends with it tilted upwards off the ground, and it makes it kind of have a weird standing guard, and that looks real nice.
Oh wait, I can scrub. Oh, he also clips. I can see that. I mean, I actually like it. I feel like it feels more realistic to have it rotate as it falls.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
once it lands, have it like
Fall back flat, yeah.
Maybe like jitter.
Yeah, I do always find it satisfying when you see that like final motion of like something stilling at the end, like right after it falls, like just add a few more frames of, yeah, like the jiggle as it sort of bounces to a stop. I do think that would be nice. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments? I like the lighting.
scene looks very bold, which is quite nice.
I think, yeah, I do agree. I think like especially the front of the counter looks really nice. It might be cool to sort of carry some of these shelves or like these little boxes to the back, and then just like watch right at the beginning. Some expensive marble shelving, but like right like at that beginning part when you see that pan, I would maybe either just sort of, again, throw some more like repeating like shelves or something in the background to fill space, or maybe just choose a slightly different camera angle that doesn't show off like the giant empty wall in the scene. But again, that's like a relatively small thing. I do think the story and stuff is pretty satisfying overall.
And also like about the drawer, just because of how it's the same uniform texture.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like it wouldn't be like that, or else it would, because it's marble's heavy, it would just fall out if the entire drawer was made out of marble. So like, and it also like makes me confused. It makes me like think that the thing is just sticking out and suspending there. Is like, I don't know. It's like.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of like plausible or like suspendability of belief that like someone has an entire shelving unit made out of marble. This is like a dumb tiny thing. What I noticed about the drawer is that it's coming out too far. There needs to be like a stop mechanism to prevent it from falling out. But again, that's things I'm.
If you put a little gap on the underside, you could have it like look like there's those little like track things that goes along.
Yeah.
But because it's like flush up against it,
Mm-hmm.
you can't even like think, oh, there's something underneath.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks more like a push fit door. Also, just like as I don't know. I don't know why I keep going on about the cabinets could look more realistic, perhaps. I like the overall texture on the counter, perhaps slightly strange on the drawers themselves.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I just really lazy to change it, so yeah, I was like,
Gotcha.
And also, like, the one drawer that's open is also like the one drawer that doesn't have a handle on it.
Yeah, I also noticed that. But yeah, I mean, I do really like, I think the overall lighting and texturing and stuff is pretty nice. Again, I just sort of like did a little bit of suspension of disbelief for like the marble cabinets and things, because I do like that light that kind of shines across in the beginning. That's quite nice. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. I do like the idea that the knife is just sort of like being a dingus and just sort of like casually following the fork along to his doom. It's quite funny. All right, cool. So I think that was all of the ones that I had. Do we miss anyone?
I submitted mine probably like 15 minutes before class.
Okay. I can grab that real quick. What was your name?
Andrew?
Andrew. Great. Let us see. All right, this is terrible UI. 5 seconds. Ah, yes, I saw this rendering. Soup. What the heck? All right, so any thoughts, comments on this one? What?
Moving very quickly.
It is also weird, actually, speaking of, I guess, how they're moving. You can't really tell on the silver can, but the Campbell's can, it looked like it wasn't rotating at all, which is definitely something I would look at. Like, it felt like they were just sort of sliding along the ground.
It was moving a little quickly 'cause it's at 30 FPS when I was supposed to be at 24.
Haha. That would do it. But yeah, so in that case, I would mostly just focus on the, definitely try to get some rotation in there if you do anything with this in the future.
I was having an issue where I would try to key the rotation, but because it had already been rotated like down, when I tried to rotate it like evenly along like the path it's going, it would get a weird like wobble, which would then make it like clip.
Okay, so you can do, there's a few things I can think of for that. So one of them is actually setting up sort of like a weird, I'm probably not gonna be able to like recreate the exact issue that you had, but one of them is to create sort of a weird like fake rig for it. So you could like add a group to this, and then for the base motion, you can key the group itself, and then you should be able to just go in and like key the actual object so it just kind of continuously rotates or something like that. The other thing that I can think to do is, let me move that. So the other thing you could do is rotate this like a weird angle. You can set your object or like the little gimbal to follow the object itself. So you can see like right now if I rotate this, it's rotating just along the Y. And you can see that again, as I rotate this, little gimbal is sort of changing based on the positioning and rotation of this fake can. So if that's normally by default, Maya sets if I just went into the tool settings for rotation. So right now the axis orientation is set to object, which is what I was suggesting that you use if maybe you weren't using that. Normally by default it's set to world, so you can kind of like rotate. Is this like kind of like the issue you're having? Yeah. Yeah, so when you set this to world, it'll kind of behave like this. So you might try setting that again, just like set that to object, and then you have that nice control over the rotation. So yeah. But yeah, cool. So any other thoughts, comments on this? Okay. I like the like squash and stretch you have at the beginning. I think most of all, like what I would focus on this is definitely try to get something a little bit maybe more tangible in for that ground plane, but also just sort of like focus on the, I guess like the physical plausibility of the motion, if that makes sense. So like again, like having rolling would be good. When the can hits the wall, maybe so like right now it just sort of like stops really abruptly. If it maybe like smacked the wall and like bounced back a little bit, I think that would be nice. I like that sort of look around that it does. And this is just like me perhaps rebelling against weird kung fu movies, but like the can jumps straight up, and then as it hits the other can, it's coming in at like a super extreme angle, if that makes sense. So again, I mean, we're talking about cans racing and battling here, so like grain of salt, but it seems like maybe the motion of that could be a little bit more pronounced, or like maybe he would like take a little bit of like a running start back and then kind of like run forward and like jump just like over one barrier kind of thing, to smack the other can out of the way. But yeah, so I think that's kind of like the stuff that I would focus on, and then maybe like if again, if you do anything with this and you happen to have some extra time, maybe throwing some extra stuff in the background would also be nice. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. In that case, we're halfway done with all the crits for the quarter, I think. I don't know how many weeks there are. But yeah, cool. So if that's the case, we're